So this is the last time I'm going to refer to Sabrina Wallace and her videos on YouTube, which you should go check out, where she's discussing how they have all of this kind of technology out there to be able to manipulate and control the NPCs in the simulation, basically. She doesn't call it necessarily a simulation, but it's the concept that obviously that they are able to control the the masses using us as if we are routers, right? Our bodies as if they are routers. Maybe not exactly people who are chosen, who have souls or who have a spirit, but definitely the programmed, you know, organic cyborgs that are the Sims that are walking around us, right? So she mentioned also that this technology started in the 50s, and by the 70s, they were already using it in a lot of the police departments and all of this in the United States. So I wanted to back this up with a little bit of my experience from my gang stalking that I thought it was very interesting. You can always check out my blog or my book that'll be out in December called Chosen by God, Targeted by the Devil, where I have given all of the details as far as like what my gang stalking consisted of, and I've always explained that supposedly like I lived in this area after a period of time where people started to accuse me of being a snitch for the police, right? That was the narrative. So obviously I lived in a big city because I was in Barcelona, and I didn't notice towards the ending before I moved from that like bad area, because again, if it was a bad area, there was police all the time driving around, raiding places. If you know anything about Barcelona and you know the center of Barcelona, it's um, it's been very dicey the last couple of decades. So anyway, so I was living in the center, so there was always like police activity roaming around. It was though towards the end before I moved, I did sometimes start to notice, but I just thought it was like a coincidence. I didn't understand, so I just thought it was a coincidence. Sometimes like I'd be going down certain streets, and then the police would be coming down that street, and I'd be like, oh no, and I'd even think to myself like, oh no, and you already have that narrative in your head. You're like, no, they're gonna think that I'm bringing, or I'm, you know what I mean? And I thought it was a coincidence. I was thinking it's a coincidence, but then I said, but then again, it's a bad neighborhood, and that's why also I made sure like I moved to better areas so that I wouldn't have that problem. But before I left to France, in the last town that I was living in, which was like a really small town, towards the end, when I started catching on like what my coworkers were doing and what the people behind my house were doing, like the neighbors that were starting to like, the Sims around there, they were like, I guess, paying them or doing things so that they can also like try to spy on me. I started to notice that when I'd be coming home from work, it'd be weird. I'd be going up a certain street, and then there'd be like police cars, like one maybe for the standing in front of a certain area, or here like in the same street where I normally frequented. I remember like once one person told me like, go changing your streets, like don't be so predictable going down the same street and all that. But because it was a small town, there was like only so many ways you can make it into the town, because you had to cross a bridge and all of this stuff, right? It was like one of these like medieval kind of setups for the town. Anyways, so it was just like something I started to notice, and then when I got to France was when I was like, no, this is ridiculous. So imagine the original narrative was that I was a snitch for the police, but yet when I went to do certain activities, like especially when it was like really like someone would send me money and I had to go to Western Union and get it out or something like this, any kind of activity where I was receiving income. So it's as if the program or the simulation made it so that anytime any kind of income would come into me, there would be police popping up, to the point where I was able to even like down to the T, like catch it and like tell my kids like, watch, they send money, watch, today we're gonna see like a group of cops around our house, or near, like they would always try to be where I could see them. So when I started working and I was going from one town to another, first it started like they'd be like in the train, and people might say like, well yeah, but in the trains they always do like kind of like walking around to make sure it's security, whatever. No, but they would be doing it like precisely the same day I would always get money, to the point where like once when I, and mind you, I don't know anybody here, and when I arrived, one cop tried to say hi to me, out of the blue, and I just ignored him. Another time, me and my kids, we were at the fair. So this wasn't even like a location that was dangerous or anything. It was like a Christmas fair, and I was just sitting there with my kids. And this is like weeks of arriving, like the second or third week. And when I turned around, by the time I got up to turn around behind me, like this whole, like it was as if like the whole department of police with the truck and everything were standing behind me. And I even told my kids, I'm like, what the heck? And some weird sim came up to me and he looked at me and he said, oh, and he said in French, punished, right? But I didn't know what he was saying in French. I had to go home and like translate it because at the time my French wasn't like that. I mean, still so, but like I didn't get it. So it definitely was for me, okay? And then I started to notice little by little, like they were trying to do things like that around where I live. Like if I was going, like I said, anytime, sometimes like when I was getting money or when I was going to do certain activities that would fix my financial situation, like getting a bank account open or anything of that nature. To the point where there was like a really good one where I even have like text messages and everything of a situation that happened because I feel like they were always trying to implicate me or trying to, make me believe, convince me of the narrative that I was dealing with them, to the point where there was one occasion where in this town where we are, my daughters came home and they were like, oh, there's some kids at school and they're throwing paper at us, whatever, like just being annoying. So I knew, obviously I told them like, no, it's the Sims because and they're doing it to annoy you, like to get a response out of you and me and all of this. So I said, don't worry about it. I'm going to write to the school. I write to the school. So when I write to the school, mind you, out of all of the choices that you could select, right? I explained it, and then it happened once, and then it happened again. So I wrote back again. I'm like, my daughters are coming home. They're saying that this is happening. The teacher's right there, and pretending like I guess she doesn't see it happening, and no one has done anything. And my request was to move them closer to the front of the classroom, right? So after I write this letter, the same day after I wrote the second letter, all of a sudden, I get a text message from the police department detective saying some cockamamie story that the person who is bullying my child is this and that, and if I want to press charges on this child, that she gives me his name in the text, okay, and says if I want to press charges on this child to contact her. And mind you, she sends two text messages, one related to my niece, with my niece's name, and one following up saying, and your daughter Denise also could be in danger. This is I swear to God, I have these messages that I sent it to everyone because I kept saying like so many things were happening people wouldn't believe, to the point where once the police actually came to my door the like first month when I lived in my apartment here in France, asking me this like nonsense if I knew who this man was that they brought with them, and I don't know if he was the neighbor who like, and he happened to be also of a certain demographic that was similar to the people in the narrative from Barcelona. Just like all this weird cockamamie nonsense, okay? Because like I said, it's harder to play the narrative where I live because it's not the same environment. So I have the text messages now. Number one, that child who she named in the message, my kids told me that kid hadn't been in school for like 3 months. So she's just naming people's children and asking me if I want to come in and press charges, right? Could you imagine if that was the state? Like, number one, they're lucky I don't know French, because if I did, I don't care if his mom was a sim, I would have done everything in my power to like get a lawsuit out on that detective, because who the hell ever would name someone's child, accuse them of being a bully of your children, not know, and that child hasn't even been there, and they're not even sure, because I never said who it was, because my daughters, although they knew who it was, they knew it wasn't that kid, and they actually said that kid was actually nice to them. And then on top of that, like I never said who the bully was, so she's naming bullies that nobody ever said. Anyways, just getting themselves caught up in the matrix, these demonics, right? So I make an appointment, I go to the school, I speak to the teacher, and I say, because it's either this one sent the cop to do it, or the cop is like, I just want to see who's going to throw the blame at who, because obviously how would the officer get my number and all of this, right? So either the teacher is responsible and participating in the activity with the officer to do these kind of shenanigans, or what's the story? and I'm gonna give it to you in part 2 because obviously this video is gonna finish. But yeah, it gets really good, and I'm just gonna explain how they try to save their behinds with this narrative in The Matrix.